All right, the AP Human Geography exam is almost here, and I know you're looking for that big picture review. Well, you've come to the right place. We've put together the ultimate visual study guide to help you connect all the dots from the entire course. We're going to move fast, hitting the core concepts and global patterns to get you totally prepped for test day.
So here's our game plan. Think of it like building blocks. We'll start with the absolute basics, the geographer's toolkit. Then we'll use those tools to look at people and culture, see how we organize everything from countries to farms, dive into the global economy, and finally, tie it all together. Let's do this.
Okay, first things first, the toolkit. Before geographers can even begin to analyze the world, they need the right equipment, the right ways of thinking to see, measure, and make sense of it all.
This right here, this is the absolute heart of all human geography. It's not just about memorizing where something is on a map. No, the real question is, why is it there? Every single model, map, and theory we're about to cover, they're all just different ways of trying to answer that one simple but huge question.
There's a saying that every map tells a lie, and it's true. There's just no way to perfectly flatten a 3D globe onto a 2D piece of paper without messing something up. You have to distort either shape, area, distance, or direction. Take the Mercator map. Great for sailing, right? But it famously makes Greenland look as big as Africa, which is not even close. So the big takeaway here is that choosing a map isn't just a technical decision. It's political. It literally shapes our perception of the world.
So how do geographers do this stuff today? A lot of it comes down to GIS, or Geographic Information Systems. The easiest way to think about it is like a digital map sandwich. Seriously, you start with a base layer, the physical map. Then you stack on another layer of data, say all the roads. Then another layer, maybe income levels. And another, like where all the parks are. When you put them all together, you can suddenly see these incredible hidden connections you'd never spot otherwise.
This is a really big deal in how geographers think about the world. There was this old, outdated idea called environmental determinism. It basically said that the physical environment, your climate, your landscape, completely dictated how successful your society could be. But we've moved way past that. The modern view is possibilism. It says, sure, the environment throws challenges at us, but we're not just passive victims. We have technology, we have creativity, and we can find ways to overcome those limits and shape our own futures.
Okay, so now that we have our toolkit, let's apply it to the most interesting and, honestly, the most complicated subject of all, us, people. We're going to dive into the spatial patterns of population, migration, and culture.
All right, if there's one model you absolutely have to know for the exam, it's this one, the Demographic Transition Model, or DTM. It's so powerful because it tells the story of how a country's population changes as it develops. It starts in stage 1 with high birth and death rates, totally unstable. Then, as sanitation and healthcare get better, death rates plummet, and you get a massive population explosion. Finally, as a country gets wealthier, birth rates fall too, and the population stabilizes, or in some cases, even starts to shrink. It's a whole journey in one graph.
And speaking of population stories, check out these shapes. Population pyramids are amazing because you can understand a country's situation in a single glance. See that wide base? That's a classic pyramid shape. It screams rapid growth, lots and lots of young people. Now look at the one with even sides. That suggests a stable population. And the one with a narrow base? That's a country with a low birth rate and an aging population. You can literally see the future challenges a country is going to face just by looking at its shape.
Why do people move? It sounds like a complicated question, but almost every migration story in history, big or small, boils down to two things: push and pull factors. It's so simple, but so powerful. Push factors are the bad things that make you want to leave. We're talking war, poverty, natural disasters. Pull factors are the good things that attract you to a new place, like jobs, safety, family, or freedom. It's always a combination of the two.
So culture doesn't just sit still, right? It moves, it spreads, and geographers call this diffusion. The most obvious kind is relocation diffusion. That's when people physically move and bring their culture with them. But ideas can also spread on their own. Think about a viral meme. That's contagious diffusion, spreading to everyone nearby. Fashion trends that start in Paris or New York and spread to smaller cities, that's hierarchical diffusion from the top down. And my favorite is stimulus diffusion. That's where the basic idea spreads, but it changes to fit the new place, like how McDonald's has a completely different menu in India than it does in the US.
All right, let's shift gears a bit. Now we're going to look at the actual marks we humans make on the planet's surface. We're talking about the patterns we create when we draw our borders, when we grow our food, and when we build our massive cities.
Okay, this is a distinction you have to get right because it explains so much about world politics.
A state is just a country, right? It's got borders, a government, the whole deal. But a nation is a group of people who feel connected by a shared culture and history. And here's the kicker. Those two things almost never line up perfectly on a map. When you have a nation of people without their own state or split across several states, that's a recipe for major conflict.
And how those borders get drawn? Oh, it matters. A lot. Some are geometric, just straight lines drawn on a map, like a lot of the US-Canada border, completely ignoring mountains or rivers. But the ones that cause the most trouble are superimposed boundaries. These are borders drawn by an outside power, usually a colonial one, that totally ignored who was actually living there. They just carved up continents like Africa, lumping rival groups together and splitting others apart, creating tensions that are still playing out today.
So why are farms laid out the way they are? This classic model from von Thunen explains it all with simple economics. It really just comes down to a trade-off between two costs, the cost of land and the cost of transportation. Land is crazy expensive right next to the city, right? But transportation is cheap. Far out in the country, land is cheap, but getting your stuff to market costs more. So things that spoil fast and are expensive to ship, like milk and vegetables, have to be grown super close to the city. Big fields of grain that don't spoil and are cheap to ship, you can grow those way out. It just makes economic sense.
Just like there are patterns for farms, there are classic models for how our cities are built. The first one, the Burgess model, imagines the city growing out in perfect rings, like a bullseye, with the downtown right in the center. Then the Hoyt model came along and said, wait a minute, it's more like slices of a pie, arguing that cities grow in wedges along things like train lines and highways. And finally, the multiple nuclei model, which is probably the most realistic for today, shows how big cities don't just have one center anymore. They have lots of different hubs for business, shopping, and living.
Okay, deep breath. Let's zoom all the way out. We've looked at cities, states, and farms, but how do they all plug into each other to create this single, massive, interconnected global economy we live in today?
One of the big ways to think about the global economy is the core-periphery model. Now, it's a powerful idea, and it can be a bit controversial, but it helps explain global inequality. It basically divides the world into a wealthy core, think North America, Western Europe, Japan, and a less developed periphery. The model argues that the core maintains its wealth by extracting cheap labor and raw materials from the periphery, which keeps the system of inequality going.
And if you want a perfect, everyday example of this, just think about a chocolate bar. Where do the cacao beans come from? Probably a periphery country like the Ivory Coast. But where does the processing happen? Where's the chocolate actually made? Usually in a core country in Europe. And then where's the final expensive chocolate bar sold? In another core country like the US. All along that chain, the real money, the big profit, is made and kept in the core.
For a long time, the core countries were the world's factories. But as the global economy changed, a lot of those manufacturing jobs moved out. They were outsourced to periphery countries where labor was a lot cheaper. This whole process is called deindustrialization, and it completely changed the economies in the core. It led to massive job losses in old industrial areas, like the American Rust Belt, while at the same time opening up a whole new economy based on services and information.
Okay, let's bring it all home. We've covered a ton of ground. Tools, people, politics, economics. Now let's tie everything we've talked about together with the big overarching themes you need to see woven through this entire course.
Think of these 4 themes as your secret weapon. Pretty much everything we've discussed can be understood through one of these lenses. So on the exam, whatever the question is, try to connect it back to one of these: spatial patterns, power and inequality, globalization, and sustainability. If you can use these big ideas to frame your answer, you're not just spitting back facts, you're really truly thinking like a geographer.
So why does any of this matter? Because human geography isn't just a trivia game about memorizing state capitals. It's about understanding the fundamental spatial patterns that are shaping our world's biggest challenges. We're talking about everything from global inequality and political wars to climate change and figuring out how to build cities that can actually last.
So look, here's the bottom line. All these models, all these terms, they are not just stuff to cram onto a flashcard. Think of them as tools. Your job on the exam is to show that you can use these tools to analyze and explain what's happening in the real world. You've got the toolkit now. Go crush it. Good luck.